It's Mike Stewart, aka Michael Stewart, aka Stewball, aka Texas Mike. Yes, it's true. I have been and am all of those things. Hey, so Ray contacted me and asked me to do some recollections about the first Beeblefest, of which I have a few. Um, First off, it was my idea. True. When I moved to Austin, about 20 years before that, the Beeble Fest was on October 25th, 1997, the first one. But when I moved to Austin, the T-Birds, Fabulous Thunderbirds, used to have every fall, late August, September, I think, a thing called Riverfest, and they were a band that was on the road all the time, and they knew tons of bands all across the country, and they would invite their friends to come and play at it, and it was at Auditorium Shores, and it was just a wonderful thing. Actually, I mean, there was thousands of people literally that would come out for every one of these things, and it was very special. And so they had stopped doing that, and I at decided what a great thing. The Gourds are a great band to do this sort of thing because same reason, they just traveled a lot and they knew a lot of people, and they were very open to being working with and being attached and being aligned with lots of different types of people. So I had started managing the band about a year before that maybe, and thought, let's have this festival. So I approached the band and they thought it was a great idea, but of course there wasn't much money around. I never was that much money around the gorge, but there wasn't enough money around to back a festival like this for the band. So I and Charles Attal from Stubbs decided that we would financially back it up, and I ended up losing a lot of money that day. The two big factors about that, before I start talking about bands and stuff, was it rained the night before. I mean, poured down rain. In fact, the Whole Foods parking garage, which was right next door to the Stubbs backyard, had flooded. The whole entire bottom floor of it was just flooded. And I remember that morning of the festival standing in that parking garage watching the water recede and realizing that it was just going to be a mud fest. And at that time period, Austin, maybe still, but Austin wasn't great about if it was muddy, people didn't go out to concerts. So uh, bottom line is I lost a lot of money that day. Now, beyond the money, it was a great lineup. There was the old 97s, the Gourds. The old 97s had been nice enough to invite the Gourds to open a lot of shows for them at the time, so they had a really great relationship. And then Tiny Town, which was Tommy Malone and Kenny Blevins from the Subdudes, New Orleans band. Um, I was officing with Lewis Myers, or Lewis was officing with me at the time actually, and he knew them, and so we were able to get them. And then there was the Damnations girls and John D. Graham and the Skeletons, Lou Whitney's band, um, Diaz Brothers, Flash from the Past. Who's in the Diaz Brothers, guys? There you go. Um, I think I can't remember who went on first. Maybe Diaz Brothers, and it was maybe John D. Maybe Diaz Brothers, but it was. I think it had just quit raining when we started at like noon or 2 o'clock, something like that, and there was hardly any people there, and it did grow into more people. I think that by the nighttime, that by the time the Gourds and then Tiny Town and then Old 97s closed the show, by the time they went on, there was enough people to justify the fact that the Old 97s had driven down here, and Tiny Town drove all the way from New Orleans to do it, and the Skeletons were on the road anyway. So it was a good evening. We did do the show with like a skeleton crew, to kind of try to keep it. So anyway, I have sort of like that sort of covering about it. I also decided that was the day that I decided that I was never going to ever be a rock promoter again. Just like I was too much into it to uh, just take the hit on a show that doesn't do well because of rain or something. I just couldn't. I don't know. Emotionally, it wasn't me to be that guy. And that was a little bit had to do with the fact that the Gourd is also the last band that I ever managed. It was like I just wasn't a manager, you know. I was a producer, more creative type, and yeah, it was worked pretty well for the bands that I did manage at the time. But yeah, I just didn't want to be a manager anymore after that sort of situation. I was with the Gourds for a while longer, exactly 5 years, and then I moved to Europe, where I lived in Denmark for a while, and Amsterdam for 10 years before my daughters started having grandbabies, and I moved back. It's hard to stay away from grandkids. I have found that out. And in regards to bands and relationships, I know that Kevin in particular, you know, is constantly in contact with people who still played on that show that day. I myself, you know, did 2 records with the Subdudes guys. Have a platinum record in Denmark with Paul Krebs and them as his backing band, and Tommy Malone played on a couple other things for me. And John D. Graham I'm still in touch with, and haven't seen the Damnations girls in a while. If it wasn't for that Beeblefest, the Gourds thing that we did last fall, I wouldn't have seen Phil in a while. That's cute. And no, cute's not the right word, I don't think, is it there? Anyway, I liked. Oh, and Lou Whitney from the Skeletons. It's like I met him that day and ended up doing a great record in his studio in Springfield, Missouri, with a band called the Hillbenders. We recorded the entire Who's Tommy record in a kind of a bluegrass version. It's a great record, Hillbenders, Tommy. If you ever want to listen to something that's fun, the recording console actually literally caught on fire in the middle of that session. That's a true story. That's the second time that happened to me in my life. So that's a little list of my recollections there. And before I sign off, I'd like to just say that I turned 69 this year, and my plan is that I'm going to make this my summer of 69 all over again. Peace and love, everybody.